It was a Tuesday morning, maybe 9 o'clock. I was living in Charlotte at the time, riding my new 2019 ZX6R that I just bought. I was taking the back roads to the freeway, heading to work. Same route I'd been riding for a few weeks. Nothing special about that day, no particular reason to remember it, but I do. I remember the moment traffic started to feel slow. Not dangerous, just slow, like I was being held back. Up until then, I'd been riding my bike like it was a car. Speed limits, lane discipline, both hands on the bars, both eyes on whatever might go wrong next. I was careful the way new riders are careful, with effort, with intention. Carefulness as a conscious act. And then somewhere on that back road, something shifted. Not dramatically, more like a dial turning, a switch being flipped. All of a sudden, the traffic around me felt like it was standing still. And I felt for the first time like I could go faster. Not that I wanted to push my luck, not that I was being reckless. I just felt like speed was available to me in a way that it hadn't been before. Like I just unlocked the new perk in the biker's skill tree. Movement speed increased 50%. Felt confident. I'm a little proud. There was a physical ease in my body that hadn't been there before. A looseness in my back and shoulders, steadiness in my hands. I twisted the throttle and I went. And I was right. I could go faster. I did go faster. Nothing bad happened. I got to work, parked the bike, took off my helmet. I felt like something changed. It had. I just didn't know yet what it was that had changed or what it was going to cost me to find out. What I felt that morning wasn't a lie I told myself. That's the thing I want to be clear about from the start, because this isn't that kind of story. I could go faster. The confidence was real. The capability was real. I wasn't a beginner anymore in the way that I'd been a few weeks before, all tensed up going through intersections, nervous about every lane change, treating every mile like a problem to survive. Something legit had developed in me: muscle memory, spatial awareness, a feel for the bike that you can't manufacture and can't rush. I was there. I had earned it. But I also knew, if I'm being honest, that I was still incompetent in the grand scheme of things. There were speeds I hadn't reached yet, situations I hadn't had to think my way out of. I'd seen other riders on those same roads who were operating at a level I could recognize but couldn't yet touch. I knew the ceiling was above me. I just couldn't see how far above me it was. That's the thing about the gap between confidence and competence. It doesn't always look like ignorance. Sometimes it looks like partial knowledge. Sometimes it looks like genuine progress. Because it is genuine progress. The problem isn't that you're wrong about what you can do. The problem is that you're right about such a small slice of it. There's a particular kind of rider, and I was this rider, who knows enough to know they're still learning, but not enough to know what they're still learning. You can see the gap exists, you just can't see its shape yet. You don't know which specific thing you don't know. And that vagueness, that unlocated incompetence, is its own kind of danger. So here's the question this ride left me with, one that I've been turning over ever since. What happens in the space between when you stop being afraid and when you've actually earned the right not to be? The first time I felt like a real rider was on a group ride. There were dozens of us, a long train of bikes threading onto the freeway, engines filling the air with that particular kind of noise that makes people on sidewalks stop and look. I'd left with a group and I was determined to stay with them. Not because anyone told me to, not because there was any prize for keeping up, but because I didn't want to be last. I didn't look like what I was, which was a noob. So I rode harder than I should have. I pushed into spaces in traffic that I'd have thought twice about on my own. I matched speeds I hadn't matched before. And the thing is, it felt good. It felt like growth. There's a philosophy in sports that says you don't get stronger by staying comfortable. That improvement lives just past the edge of your current ability. I believe that. And I still believe some version of it. And on that freeway, surrounded by riders who were better than me, I told myself that's what I was doing, improving, pushing the edge of what I could do in the way that anyone serious about anything eventually has to. What I wasn't accounting for was that an athlete training at their limit does so in a controlled environment. A rider pushing their limit does so at 100-something miles an hour, surrounded by 2-ton vehicles driven by people who don't know you're there. I learned the difference the hard way, but not the hardest way. I was following a guy on a Ducati. He was quick and smooth in the way that experienced riders are quick and smooth. Not frantic, just inevitable. Like he and the road had already worked everything out between them. When he moved left and began threading between the 2 lanes of traffic, I followed him without thinking. That's the part that stays with me. I didn't decide to do it, I just did it. The same way you follow someone through a door before you've thought about whether you want to go inside. The 2 vehicles on either side of me were not moving. The space I had was small. Smaller than I'd chosen if I'd chosen it. But I was committed. I had to commit. There was no backing out, no slowing down, no option that didn't involve going forward. So I went forward. I kept my hands steady, found the throttle, and squeezed through the gap with maybe inches to spare on either side. I made it through. Afterwards, I didn't feel proud. I felt something more low key than that. A specific kind of stillness that I've come to recognize as the feeling of having been closer to something than you understood in the moment. What was that something? Probably disaster or failure. I stopped trying to keep up with the other bikes after that. I just rode. My speed, my space, my decisions, riding your own ride. It took almost losing control to understand what control actually was. But the illusion doesn't shatter all at once. It erodes, slowly and sometimes at great cost to people around you. I've seen riders go down over the years. Not strangers, not statistics, but people I knew, friends. Some of them got up, some of them didn't. And every time there was that same stillness, that same quiet recalibration of what this thing we do actually is and what it asks of us, what it can take without warning or apology. You don't become a better rider just by surviving those moments, but you do become a more honest one. I've been thinking about this pattern for a long time, and I don't think it starts or ends with motorcycles. I've walked into rooms in my career where everyone around me had years of experience and technical knowledge that I simply didn't have yet. And I didn't shrink from it. I stood there and tried to hold my own, contributed when I probably should have just listened, pushed when I probably should have just watched. Not out of arrogance exactly, out of something harder to name. A refusal to be seen as the least capable person in the room, even when I was. I've done it in sports too. Competed against athletes who were stronger, faster, more technically refined. I told myself that closing the gap was just a matter of will. Sometimes it was. Sometimes will isn't the variable that matters most. And you find that out the hard way, on the field or on the court, in front of people who can see exactly what you're doing and exactly where it falls short. I've even done it in something as low stakes as video games. Sitting across from friends who were operating at a level I couldn't touch, refusing to acknowledge the gap, playing like I belonged there until the scoreboard said otherwise. There's a thread running through it all, a particular kind of competitive drive that doesn't pause to ask whether the conditions are right for what it's asking. It just goes. It sees people who are better and moves towards them instead of away. Sometimes before the foundation is there to support the move. On a motorcycle, that thread has a different weight to it. In a career, you can fake competence for a while. In sports, you lose the game. In video games, just respawn. But on a bike, at speed, in traffic, the gap between what you believe you can do and what you've actually earned the ability to do doesn't stay abstract for long. The road has a way of making everything concrete, of taking the invisible and making it very, very visible, very, very fast. That's not an argument against riding. It's an argument for why riding might be the most honest mirror I've ever held up to myself. Every other arena let me maintain the illusion a little bit longer. The bike never did. But here's the thing I have to be honest about. If I can go back to that Tuesday morning, to that back road, that switch being thrown, that first taste of what riding could feel like, and I could see everything that was coming, every near miss, every moment of being in over my head, every friend I'd eventually lose to this thing we all love. If I could see all of it laid out clearly, the full cost of the next 8 years on a motorcycle, I would do it anyway. Not because I'm reckless, not because I don't understand what the road can take, but because I also know what it gives. And I'm not sure I can explain that to someone who hasn't felt it, but I'm gonna try. There's nothing else in my life that locks me in the way riding does. Nothing that demands my full attention so completely that everything else, every worry, every distraction, every noise that follows you through the rest of the day goes quiet. The road doesn't allow you to be somewhere else mentally. It pulls you into the present moment with a grip that nothing else I've ever found can match. That focus, that total presence is not a side effect of riding. For me, it's the whole point. And then there's what it's built. The people. A close group of friends that I wouldn't have if I'd never hopped on a bike. An entire social world that exists because of a shared relationship with something dangerous and beautiful and completely consuming. You don't build those kinds of friendships over safe hobbies. You build them over things that ask something real of you. So what do I do with that? What do I do with the knowledge that the gap, the dangerous, humbling, occasionally terrifying gap between confidence and competence is also the doorway to all of it? That you can't have the focus without the risk. That you can't have the brotherhood without the shared stakes. That the thing that could have taken everything from me is also the thing that gave me everything worth having. Maybe the gap isn't a design flaw. Maybe it's the price of admission. Maybe the only way to get to the other side of it is to go through it without being able to see clearly. Because if you could see clearly, you'd never go at all. And if you never went at all, you'd never know what was waiting on the other side. I don't know if that's wisdom or rationalization. Probably it's both. I don't ride those roads anymore. I moved away from that city years ago. And the back roads and freeways where I spent my first 1,000 miles are somewhere behind me now. Part of a version of my life I can only access through memory. Sometimes I think about going back, riding those same streets just to see what they feel like under a different version of me. And on a different bike. But I know what they'd feel like. I'd be bored. The roads that once sat right at the edge of everything I could do are well inside the boundary of what I can do now. They'd feel small. And I'm not sure I'm ready to feel that particular kind of nostalgia from the seat of a bike. The strange mix of gratitude and distance that comes with revisiting a place that shaped you but can't challenge you anymore. I'm a better rider now. 8 years of muscle memory, situations navigated and lessons absorbed, of friends lost and friendships built, of near misses that recalibrated something deep in the way I think about speed and space and the distance between confidence and the thing that confidence is supposed to be standing in for. All of that lives in my hands now, in the way I move through traffic, in the decisions I make before I even know I'm making them. And still, on new roads, in new cities, on stretches of asphalt that I've never seen before, I feel that switch. Not the same way, not with the same innocence or excitement, but it's there. That particular ease, that looseness in the shoulders, that sense that the road is offering me something and I have the ability to take it. And I do take it. Because that feeling never stopped being real. And I never stopped wanting it. But I notice something now that I didn't notice then. A small voice underneath the confidence. Not loud enough to slow me down. just loud enough to be heard. You know more than you did. You don't know everything. You never will. I don't know if that voice is wisdom or just the accumulated weight of experience talking. I don't know if the gap ever fully closes or if it just gets more familiar. Something you learn to ride with rather than something you leave behind. I don't know if the switch that got thrown on that Tuesday morning made me a better rider or just a more willing one. And I'm not sure anymore that those are different things. What I know is I got on the bike today and I'll get on tomorrow. And somewhere between here and wherever the road goes next, there will be a moment where I feel capable, and the question of whether I've earned that feeling will hang in the air, unanswered, the way it always has, the way it probably always will. If you made it to the end of this video, leave a comment. Tell us about the time where you stopped feeling like a newbie and started feeling like a legit rider. If you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.